My wife and her lawyer brother forged my signature to steal $300, $0 of our inheritance, and now she's pretending she has amnesia about the entire scheme. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. My wife, Jessica, was the last person I expected to betray me like this, not just emotionally, but financially too. The craziest part. She's been lying through her teeth about everything, and I only found out after I stumbled on a series of shocking clues that turned my world upside down. It all started about 2 months ago. Things between Jessica and me had been a little rocky, but I thought it was just typical stress, work, the kids, life. Jessica's always been a bit of a bitch when she's annoyed, but she's also charming when she wants to be. She's the kind of woman who can switch from sweet to icy in a heartbeat, and I guess I was used to her mood swings. Still, I never suspected she was capable of the kind of betrayal I uncovered. One afternoon, I was going through some old papers in our home office, tidying up after a long week. I noticed a few strange things. Some bank statements that didn't match what I knew she had told me, a few emails that seemed off, and a couple of receipts for large sums of money I definitely didn't authorize. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe she was managing the household finances or paying some bills I'd forgotten about. But then I saw the name her brother, David, a lawyer, and that's when the alarm bells started ringing. Jessica and David have always been close, but I never really paid much attention to their relationship beyond casual family dinners. Turns out that connection was more than just familial. I found out that Jessica had been talking to him about the inheritance we received from my grandparents, a substantial amount, around $300, $0. I had been saving that for years for the kids' education and our future. But the more I dug, the more I realized something was seriously wrong. I found emails between Jessica and David that were explicit, discussing how they could fudge my signature on some legal documents to access the inheritance. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife, my partner of 10 years, was secretly working with her brother to steal our money. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. They'd forged my signature on multiple documents. The worst part, Jessica was pretending she had no idea what I was talking about when I confronted her. She kept lying, claiming she was confused, forgetful, or that I was imagining things. She even told me she had no idea how those emails got into her account, that her brother must have hacked her. I was furious. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. How could she lie so effortlessly? I knew she was a bitch sometimes, but I never thought she'd stoop this low. It was like I was living with a stranger. I felt betrayed not just as her husband, but as the father of our 2 kids. I kept asking myself how I could have missed the signs, how I could have been so blind. I had always trusted her, and now I felt like I'd been played for a fool. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything I'd uncovered, trying to make sense of it. I felt hurt, angry, and betrayed all at once. The fact that she had been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, and plotting to steal what was supposed to be our future, it was too much. I wanted to confront her, but I knew I had to plan my next move carefully. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I decided I needed proof. I contacted a private investigator the next day just to confirm what I'd found. Turns out I wasn't imagining things. The evidence was concrete. Jessica and David had forged my signature on multiple legal documents, transferred the inheritance into her brother's account, and then she had the nerve to pretend she had amnesia about the whole thing. I couldn't believe her audacity. I felt like I'd been slapped with a tidal wave of betrayal, and I knew I had to do something about it. But here's the thing, I also found out she was cheating on me with her boss, Mark. That was the cherry on top. She'd been seeing him for months, sneaking around behind my back while I was busy trying to keep our family afloat. I caught her in the act one night when I came home early from work and saw her in our bed with him. She was trying to lie her way out of it, saying it was nothing, just a fling, but I knew better. That was the moment I realized my entire life was a lie. So now I'm sitting here trying to figure out what the hell to do next. Do I confront her again? Do I expose her to the world? Do I take everything I have and walk away? I've never been the kind of guy to seek revenge, but after what she's done, I feel like I need to make her pay. Not just for the money, but for the years of lies, betrayal, and emotional pain she's caused me. I know this story is just beginning, but I needed to get it all out. I've been holding this inside for weeks, and I can't keep it bottled up anymore. If anyone out there has been through something similar, I'd love some advice. How do you pick up the pieces after discovering your wife is a liar, a thief, and a cheater all in one? How do you even trust again? I don't have all the answers yet, but I know one thing: Jessica's going to regret messing with me. After I confirmed everything with the private investigator, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. It was as if my entire world had shattered into pieces, and I was just trying to figure out how to pick up the fragments without cutting myself. The worst part was knowing that Jessica had been lying to my face for months about everything: her affair, the money, her brother's involvement. She kept insisting she had amnesia about the scheme to steal our inheritance, but I knew better. That woman could lie with a straight face, and she had. I watched her try to spin her stories, her bitchy attitude flaring up every time I pressed her on the details. I remember confronting her again that same night. I was furious, trembling with rage and disappointment. I told her I knew about the forged signatures, the stolen money, and her affair with Mark. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head, her eyes narrowing, that bitchy smirk creeping onto her face. "You're crazy, Jason," she sneered. "You're just jealous because I'm having sex with someone who actually cares about me." That was her go-to lie, trying to make me feel like I was overreacting, like I was the one with the problem. But I wasn't stupid anymore. I knew what was really going on. Jessica's reaction only fueled my anger. She kept denying everything, claiming I had trust issues, that I was paranoid, and that I was imagining her affair altogether. She threw in some classic gaslighting, telling me I was seeing things, that I was overreacting, and that I was crazy for suspecting her of anything. I could see the bitchy edge in her voice, the way she'd always been good at twisting things to her favor. But I had enough evidence now: emails, bank statements, her brother's own confession, to know she was lying. I felt betrayed, not just as her husband, but as a man who had given her everything. The emotional roller coaster was brutal. One moment, I was furious and ready to explode. The next, I was devastated and questioning everything I ever believed about her. I felt like I had been punched in the gut every time she looked me in the eye and lied. It was like watching a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. I trusted her with my life, my money, our future, and she'd been secretly planning to steal it all. That realization hit me hard. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the betrayal of everything we had built together. I couldn't sleep after that confrontation. I kept replaying her words, her lies, her sneers. I thought about the kids, about what kind of woman she really was behind the facade. I felt sick. I began to question how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. I remembered her bitchy attitude, her manipulative ways, and her constant need to control everything. Now I saw her for what she really was: a liar, a cheat, and a thief. The anger was boiling inside me, but so was a deep sense of sadness and loss. I had lost the woman I married, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to trust again. I knew I couldn't just let this go. I had to do something, but I also had to be smart about it. Jessica was cunning, and I couldn't afford to make mistakes. I decided to gather all the evidence I could to document her lies and her brother's involvement. I started taking screenshots of emails, saving bank statements, and even recording her conversations when she wasn't aware. I needed proof to confront her properly, to make her admit what she'd done. I also started to think about what I wanted moving forward: divorce, legal action. I wasn't sure yet, but I knew I couldn't stay married to someone who had lied and stolen from me. Meanwhile, Jessica's attitude didn't change much. She continued to act bitchy, throwing tantrums whenever I questioned her, insisting she was innocent. She'd deny everything, call me paranoid, accuse me of spying on her. But I had enough now. I saw through her act. I knew she was hiding something: her affair, her brother's scheme, her lies. Her pretending to have amnesia about the theft was the last straw. She thought she could get away with everything, but I was done playing her game. What made it worse was her constant blaming me. She told me I was the problem, that I didn't understand her, that I was overreacting because I was insecure. That bitchy attitude she always had was now amplified by her lies and manipulations. It was like she was trying to gaslight me into doubting my own judgment, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I knew the truth, and I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. I started planning my next move. I wanted to confront her publicly, to expose her to everyone, but I also knew I needed to be cautious. Jessica was dangerous when she was cornered. I had to think about the kids, about my own safety, and about how to get justice. This wasn't just about money, it was about respect, about my dignity. I had given her everything, and she'd thrown it all away for some affair and a scheme to steal our inheritance. It was a sick, twisted betrayal, and I was determined to see it through. So here I am, sitting in my home, feeling like I've been punched in the gut 100 times over. I've got enough evidence now to destroy her if I want to. But part of me still hopes for some kind of redemption, some way to fix this mess. Honestly, though, I don't know if I can ever trust her again. The woman I married is gone, replaced by someone I don't even recognize. And I don't know what's worse, losing the money or losing my wife. Either way, I'm not going down without a fight. The more I discovered about Jessica's lies and her affair with Mark, the clearer it became that I was dealing with someone completely different from the woman I married. I used to think she was just a bitchy, manipulative personality, someone who liked to control and push boundaries. But now I saw her for what she really was, a con artist, a liar, and a cheat. Every time she tried to deny her involvement with her brother or her affair with Mark, I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. But her bitchy attitude was still there, trying to dismiss everything as if I was overreacting or imagining things. That night, after she kept spinning her stories, I decided enough was enough. I sat her down and laid all the evidence on the table, screenshots of her emails with David, bank statements showing the transfers, recordings of her denying everything. I told her I knew about the forged signatures and the stolen money, that I had proof. Her reaction was classic Jessica. She looked angry, then defiant, then started crying fake tears. "Jason, you're just trying to ruin me," she snapped. "You always think I'm cheating or stealing, but I swear I don't know what you're talking about. You're paranoid and you're making this all up." Her crocodile tears didn't move me anymore. I was past the point of caring about her lies. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her, "You've been lying to me for months. You've been sleeping with Mark and stealing from us. How could you do this? How could you betray me like this?" Her bitchy smirk returned, and she told me I was overreacting, that I was crazy for accusing her of everything. She insisted she had no idea about the money, that her brother must have forged her signature without her knowing. I knew she was lying, but hearing her say it out loud made my stomach turn. That's when I decided I needed to take control. I called a lawyer the next morning, a friend of a friend who specialized in financial crimes and betrayals. I wanted to know my options, and I needed to start protecting myself and my children. The lawyer told me I had grounds for a legal separation and possibly a lawsuit to recover the stolen inheritance. I also told him I wanted to expose Jessica's affair, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for that yet. I just knew I couldn't stay married to her, not after everything I'd uncovered. The betrayal ran too deep. In the meantime, I started gathering more evidence. I changed all our passwords, set up a separate bank account in my name only, and hired a private investigator to keep tabs on Jessica. I didn't want her to get away with anything else. I also started talking to close friends and family, slowly telling them what I'd discovered. The reactions were mixed. Some people were sympathetic, others told me to just walk away and forget about the money. But I knew I couldn't just forget, not after Jessica had stolen from us and lied about her affair. I wanted justice, even if it meant tearing my life apart. Jessica kept up her act, trying to be the victim in all this. She threw tantrums, called me jealous, accused me of spying on her. Her bitchy attitude was relentless, and she'd lash out at anyone who challenged her. Mark, her lover, was still around, making things worse. I saw them together a few times, sneaking around, and I felt a wave of disgust every time. How could she be so callous? How could she pretend she didn't know what she was doing? It was like she was trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty for catching her. but I refused to fall for her games anymore. One day, I found out she'd been talking to her friends about how I was crazy and possessive. She was painting herself as the victim, the wronged wife, while she was secretly screwing her boss and stealing our money. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had been lying to my face for years. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I thought about the countless nights I'd worked late, the weekends I'd spent trying to provide for our family, only to find out she was secretly planning to take everything from me. That realization hit me hard. I had to get out of this before I lost everything, my money, my dignity, my sanity. But I also knew I couldn't just run away from her, not without making her pay. I wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused me, to see her suffer for all the lies, the betrayal, the cheating. That's when the idea of revenge started to take shape. Not just legal revenge, but something more personal. I was tired of being the naive husband who trusted her blindly. Now I wanted her to understand what it felt like to be betrayed, to be used, to be lied to. I spent the next few days planning my next steps carefully. I wanted to confront her again, but this time with even more evidence. I was going to give her one last chance to come clean, or I'd go public with everything. I knew she was bitchy enough to spin a story, but I also knew I had the power now. The power of truth. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be her doormat anymore. I was done being the victim of her schemes. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. I just hoped I was strong enough to handle the fallout. The day I decided to confront Jessica again, I knew I had to be strategic. I'd gathered enough evidence to blow her entire world apart, and I wasn't about to back down now. I set up everything meticulously: recordings, copies of forged documents, bank transfers. I even prepared a timeline so I could lay out exactly how she'd betrayed me, how she'd lied, cheated, and stolen. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just angry, I was done playing her game. I was about to make sure she paid for everything. That evening, I told her I needed to talk serious talk. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, the one that always meant trouble. She tried to act innocent, like she didn't know what I was about to say, but I cut her off. I laid everything out: the emails, the forged signatures, the stolen inheritance, her affair with Mark. I told her I had proof, and I was going to expose her. Her face twisted into a sneer, trying to dismiss me, trying to make me feel guilty for spying on her. She started crying fake tears, trying to get me to feel sorry for her, but I wasn't having it. "You lied to me, Jessica," I said, voice cold. "You lied about everything from the affair to the money. You think you can just pretend none of this happened. You think I'm stupid." She snapped back, "You're just paranoid. You're making this all up because you're insecure." That bitchy attitude was still there, but I saw right through it now. She was desperate, trying to hold on to her lies, but I had her cornered. I told her I knew about the affair with Mark, that I'd seen them together, that I had proof of her cheating. Her face paled for a second, then she looked furious. I pressed her further, asking how she could do this to me, to our family. She shot back with more lies, saying Mark was just a fling, that she didn't love him, that she was only with him because I was never around, that I was too busy working to notice her needs. I told her that was bullshit, that she was just using her bitchy attitude to cover up her guilt. I told her I was tired of her lies, tired of being played, that I was done letting her manipulate me. Her reaction was predictable. She started screaming, calling me all sorts of names: jealous, possessive, crazy. She claimed I was trying to control her, that I was just insecure because I found out she cheated. But I knew better. I knew she was a manipulative, lying bitch who'd been screwing her boss and stealing our money while pretending to be innocent. I told her she had one last chance: tell me the truth or I'd go public with everything. I wanted her to come clean, to face the consequences of her actions. She hesitated for a moment, then spat out, "Fine. Yes, I cheated on you, with Mark. Yes, I took the money. But I did it because I was unhappy, because you never paid attention to me. I was just trying to get what I deserved." I couldn't believe my ears. The woman I'd trusted for 10 years was admitting everything, yet she still had that bitchy, arrogant attitude, like she was proud of her lies. I felt a mix of rage and disgust. How could she be so callous? How could she justify her actions? I told her she was a selfish, manipulative woman who destroyed everything we built. I told her I was done, that I was leaving. I said I'd file for divorce and take legal action to recover the stolen money. I also told her I'd tell everyone about her affair and her lies. Her face twisted into a sneer again, and she yelled, "Go ahead. Do your worst. You'll never get a dime from me. I'll make sure you regret this." That was her way of trying to intimidate me, but I was beyond caring. I knew she was bluffing. After that confrontation, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd finally uncovered the truth, and I'd made her admit everything. But the emotional damage was done. I'd lost trust, I'd lost my wife's respect, and I'd lost my sense of security. I looked at her standing there bitchy and defiant, and I realized I couldn't stay in this toxic marriage anymore. I needed to get out and start over. The pain was immense, but I knew I had to do what was best for me and the kids. I started making plans to leave the house. I contacted my lawyer again to formalize the separation. I also made arrangements to get full custody of the kids, knowing Jessica would likely fight me tooth and nail. I wanted to protect them from her manipulative ways. I also told her I'd be suing her for the stolen inheritance, and I'd be reporting her to the authorities if necessary. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, not just the legal ones, but the emotional ones as well. Jessica, of course, didn't take it well. She threw more bitchy tantrums, calling me names, accusing me of ruining her life. She said I was heartless, that I was destroying our family, but I didn't care anymore. I'd reached my breaking point. I'd given her enough chances, and every time she lied or manipulated her way out of it. Now I was done being the victim. I was going to fight for my rights, for my dignity, and for the future I still wanted to build for myself and my kids. That night, I sat alone in the house, feeling a strange sense of clarity. I had everything I needed to move forward. The betrayal was still fresh, but I knew I would survive this. I'd face whatever came next: legal battles, emotional fallout, because I refused to let her destroy me completely. Jessica was a bitchy, manipulative woman who thought she could get away with everything. But she was wrong. I was done playing her game. It was time to take control of my life again. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and emotional exhaustion. I moved out of the house, taking the kids with me, knowing Jessica would do everything in her power to turn this into a nightmare. I had already filed for legal separation and was preparing to sue her for the stolen inheritance, plus exposing her affair publicly. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal, but I also knew I had to stay composed. The last thing I needed was to give her any reason to manipulate the situation further. Jessica's bitchy attitude didn't fade. If anything, it intensified. She was furious that I was taking control, calling me names, accusing me of ruining her life. She insisted she was the real victim and that I was just trying to punish her because I was insecure. She threw tantrums, slammed doors, and did her best to paint herself as the wronged wife. But I saw through her act. I knew she was trying to guilt-trip me into backing down, but I was done playing her game. I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight. Meanwhile, Mark kept popping up in her mind, and I couldn't help but feel a deep disgust every time I thought about what she'd been doing behind my back. I'd caught her with him more than once, sneaking around, pretending to be innocent. Now, she was trying to spin stories about how their relationship was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. But I knew better. I knew she'd been cheating on me for months, maybe longer. Seeing her with Mark, her bitchy smirk on her face, made me realize how much I'd been blind. I'd given her everything: my trust, my love, and she'd repaid me with lies and betrayal. The legal process was slow but steady. My lawyer warned me Jessica would fight hard, using her bitchy attitude to try to manipulate the court and the people around her. She started calling me names to anyone who would listen, claiming I was a controlling, jealous husband who was trying to ruin her life. She even tried to turn the kids against me, telling them I was mean and unfair. But I stayed calm, sticking to the facts, providing evidence of her lies and theft. I wanted her to realize that her manipulations wouldn't work anymore. One day, I got a call from my lawyer with some shocking news. Jessica had tried to claim she had amnesia about the entire scheme, that she didn't remember forging my signature or stealing the inheritance. Her lawyer argued that she was confused and not responsible, trying to delay the proceedings. I couldn't believe her audacity. She's the same bitchy woman who's been lying through her teeth, yet now she's pretending she's forgetful. That was the final straw. I knew she was trying to manipulate the system, but I also knew I had enough proof to fight her claims. That night, I sat in my new apartment, feeling drained but determined. I'd gone through hell, but I was finally taking back control. I thought about the kids, about how much I loved them and how I wanted to give them a stable, honest life. Jessica's bitchy attitude and manipulations wouldn't stop me from fighting for what's right. I also realized that I'd learned a lot about trust, or the lack of it, and how dangerous it was to ignore the warning signs. I've been so blind to her true nature, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who was willing to destroy everything for her own gain. I started planning my next move carefully. I wanted to expose her fully, to show everyone her true colors. I also wanted to make sure she paid for her crimes, financially and emotionally. I hired a forensic accountant to help trace the stolen inheritance, and I was preparing to take her to court for everything she'd done. I knew Jessica would fight hard, using her bitchy attitude to try to manipulate the court and the people around her. She started calling me names to anyone who would listen, claiming I was a controlling, jealous husband who was trying to ruin her life. She even tried to turn the kids against me, telling them I was mean and unfair. But I stayed calm, sticking to the facts, providing evidence of her lies and theft. I wanted her to realize that her manipulations wouldn't work anymore. The most surprising thing was how much I was starting to feel relief. Despite all the pain, I knew I was finally free from her toxic grip. I was focusing on rebuilding my life, on being a better father, and on making sure I never let someone like Jessica manipulate me again. I still had a long road ahead, but I was determined. I'd learned a hard lesson about trust, betrayal, and the importance of standing up for myself. Jessica's bitchy attitude, her lies, her cheating, none of it would define me anymore. I was taking back control, and I wasn't going to let her ruin me. Not anymore. The final stretch of this nightmare finally arrived, and I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. After months of legal battles, deception, and emotional upheaval, I was finally at a point where I could start to breathe again. The court hearings confirmed what I'd known all along: Jessica's lies, her theft, her affair, all laid bare for everyone to see. Her bitchy attitude, which she'd used to manipulate and control, had cracked under the weight of her own lies. I watched her try to spin stories, call me names, and act like the victim, but it was all hollow. The truth was out, and she couldn't hide from it anymore. In the end, I managed to recover most of the stolen inheritance through the courts, and Jessica was hit with a hefty financial penalty for her fraud. Her lawyer's attempts to claim amnesia or innocence were dismissed outright once the evidence proved otherwise. The court saw through her bitchy facade, her manipulative, entitled attitude, and made sure she paid the consequences. The affair with Mark was also exposed publicly, and it damaged her reputation beyond repair. I didn't care about that anymore. I just wanted to move on. The hardest part was seeing her face when she realized she'd lost everything: her money, her marriage, her freedom to manipulate. She became more bitchy, more bitter, but I didn't respond. I had finally reached a point where I felt strong enough to let go of the anger that had consumed me for so long. I realized that revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my peace of mind. I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and rebuilding yourself from the ashes. The kids are doing better now. They still love their mother, but they see her for what she truly is: a woman who lied, cheated, and betrayed their father. I've worked hard to give them stability and honesty, and they're starting to heal. I've also started therapy to process everything I've been through. It's been a tough journey, but I feel stronger for it. I've learned not to trust blindly, to listen to my instincts, and to stand up for myself no matter what. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown. I was naive, trusting, maybe too forgiving. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight hard for what's right, even if it means losing someone you loved. Jessica's bitchy attitude, her lies, her cheating, those things didn't define me. What defined me was my ability to pick myself up, to fight for justice, and to rebuild my life. I've come out of this stronger, wiser, and more cautious about who I trust. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, my advice is simple. Don't ignore the warning signs. Trust your gut. If something feels off, investigate. Don't let anyone manipulate you or lie to your face, even if they're your wife, your husband, or someone you love. Be brave enough to face the truth, no matter how painful it is. And remember, you're stronger than you think. You can survive betrayal, lies, and even the worst kind of deception. Just hold on, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone take away your dignity. Because at the end of the day, the only person who can truly save you is yourself.